Hello, everyone. This is Casey Stubbs with a new episode of the How to Trade It podcast. And I'm really excited about today's episode. It is going to really help you, but it's only going to help you if you slow down, take some notes on what you're hearing, and then take action on it. So if you're driving, you don't want you to take notes. But if you're driving, come back when you have some time, when you're in the evening before bed or when you get up, just sit down at the table and make some notes. Because these 7 points I'm going to talk about today could change your trading and change your life. So let's get ready to go. The first thing I wanted to mention about today's episode is I was going to talk about precision entries. And I know a lot of you would really love that, and I will talk about that in a future episode soon. However, I have been watching a lot of my listeners through email conversation and also our members, and I realize that precision entries is not the problem for most people. And when I say precision entries, I mean really finding a great entry. A lot of people think that would solve their problems, but it actually does not. It is an important thing, though. It is very important, but this is something even more important, and that is you're creating good trading habits. And I know it's not exciting, but I'm going to make it exciting today, so you're going to want to listen to it. So if your eyes were rolling, like, oh man, he's going to talk about trading habits, oh, how boring. Don't think that way. Get a new mindset and get excited because I'm going to make it interesting. I'm going to make it interesting, and I'm going to have key action items for you along the way. So this is going to be really valuable for you. I do have a special request, though. At the end, I'm going to ask something from all of you. And so just listen to the end, and I'm going to have a special request, and it's really important to me. And please just be staying tuned for that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to talk about creating great trading habits. Now, just to preface this, I recently went through and read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. So when I am sharing something on a podcast, I'm feeding you guys. But the reason I'm feeding you is because I'm feeding myself. I'm constantly reading, studying, watching, and I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to purposely grow. So I know that habits are important, and I have some bad ones, and I wanted to fix that, right? And so I read this book, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to need to apply this stuff in my life. And you know what else I thought? I thought, if I teach this, that will help me apply it even more, because now I'm going to be more accountable. I'm going to be better at the material. So I have to just go over it all over again. So I read it, and now I'm going to go over it again. So I'm going to even get better at it. It's going to make me a better person to learn and then to teach what I'm learning. And then now I'm going to do what I'm learning, and that's going to even make it even better. So the first thing I want to talk about with habits that's super critical that people don't realize, and that is that small habits make a very tiny difference. Really small stuff that you didn't even think would make a difference, are absolutely huge. They're absolutely huge. And so if we apply this to trading, a tiny little adjustment in your trading strategy could yield massive results. And I'm going to give you the example that they talked about in the book. So in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he was talking about a pilot. And if there's any listeners that are pilots, you guys will understand this even more. But I can use this story. I'm going to relate it in a personal experience. So as a pilot, if you are flying from Los Angeles and you're going to New York and you are off by 1 degree, you end up 1,000 miles from New York City, because 1 degree might not be a big deal if you're traveling 10 miles, right? You might be a mile off target, right? But if you're traveling 3,000 miles, you're 1,000 miles off target. Okay. And so that's the power of a small habit, right? So let's adjust that to trading. If you adjust your risk management so that you lose 1% less on every trade, over time, that's going to have a $1 million effect on your account over long term, right? So just be thinking about small habits, little tiny things that might not seem like a big deal to you, actually are a huge deal. And so that will help us as we continue to grow in our trading. Now, I want to use a personal example just to really drive it home, and that is in the military. I used to do this. I used to do land navigation, and land navigation is where they give you a map and they say you got to go in the woods and you got to find these points, but all they give you is a map and a compass. And so the idea is you know where you start, but you don't know where point one is. So it's the same thing as flying, but it's in a much smaller thing. So I would get my compass and I'd say, okay, I need to go southeast, and I would just walk southeast and I would follow that compass. And if you get off track, you're never going to find your point. You've got to maintain your trajectory or you're going to miss the mark. And when we have goals in our life, if we have trading goals specifically, if we miss our mark, that will, if we don't have these small habits, we're going to miss our mark. That's what I meant to say. We've got to create these small habits. And that's the good thing, is that they're small. So what does it mean that they're small? Well, it means that it's easier to do. But we have to be intentional and think about how we do them. So that's the first point. Point number one is that small habits make a big difference. And I had a quote, just in preparing for this, I was looking around for some research, and I saw that limit your size in any position so that fear does not become the prevailing instinct guiding your judgment. And that was Joe Vittich. He said, limit your size in any position so that fear does not become the prevailing instinct guiding your judgment. So again, that's smaller size, and that's a habit, smaller risk. And part of that habit is you're doing it so that you don't have fear, right? You're purposely keeping your trade size small so you don't have fear. Okay, so the next point that I want to hit on from the book, and that is habits are like programming. It's just like something we would do in an EA. An EA is an expert advisor. It's a trading program. It's an algorithm, right? Our habits are programming. So what do I mean by that? Well, what do you do when you get up in the morning? A lot of people will get up, they roll out of bed, they get on their phone, they start scrolling, they get their coffee, they brush their teeth, they flip on the TV. Whatever your habit is, that is like a pre-programmed method that you do every day, right? Some of your habits might be, if we go to work, we might be like, hit the snooze button, hit the snooze button, hit the snooze button, jump right out of bed, and off to work we go. Brush our teeth in the car on the way. That's a habit, right? And so the reason they're habits is because we're not thinking about them. We're not thinking about them. And we want to be the kind of people that think about what we're doing. So as I'm saying this, the action item for this point is, what are your trading habits? Now, I really want you to go deeper than that and slow down and say, okay, what are my habits when I get up? What are my habits when I go to bed? And really think about how to do this. But let's start small. You guys are here to trade, so let's start small with trading habits. But let's take it deeper. Let's go further. Anyways, what are your trading habits? When you sit down at the computer, what do you do? What do you do? Do you trade from your phone? Do you review the news? Do you have a systematic strategy for reviewing your performance? Do you analyze your risk before you take the trade? Do you do a specific analysis before you trade? Do you have a set process and system that you follow every time? How are you managing your risk? Do you do the same risk parameters every time? Do you have it all written out, and do you understand what your trading habits are? Most people don't have good habits when it comes to trading. But I want to challenge you, think about your trading habits, write them down, and what do you do, and what could you do to improve it? What small things? So one thing that I did that really helped me is I would do my trade analysis on Sunday, and I would say, here's what I'm looking at trading next week. If the market does this, this is the trade I'm looking to take, right? And I would just be really structured, and I would know what I was doing before I went into the market. And that habit really helped me in my performance. It helped me with my precision entries, which I'm not going to talk about in this episode, but we will talk about that in a future episode. So that was a habit that I built in that was very helpful. Another habit that I built in was managing my risk and purposely watching my total average loss size at the beginning of each week. When I'm doing my analysis, I'm like, okay, at the beginning of this week, I don't want to lose any trade bigger than $500, right? And that I would set that max loss size, and that would be it. I would never go below that, and I would say I would never go above it. I would say I'm not going to go over 500, and I want to stay below. So I would really be purposeful, and my habit was to set my lot size and to set my trade loss at the beginning of every trading week, and then follow up at the end of the week to see how well I did it following that rule. That habit really helped me out. So as the action step for this is, what's your trading habits? What are they? What are the good ones? What are the bad ones? Everybody has them. If you don't even think about it, that's a problem, because that means you're happing on the programming. Your programming means you're programmed to sit down and start trading. We need to flip the program. We need to rewrite the code, right? Our brains are like computers, and we need to rewrite the code. Okay, and so I'm going to talk to you about how to rewrite the code in the next step. And the next step, so point number 3 about building new habits is that you have to rewrite your code. And part of the way that you do that is you put hard to miss obstructions in your path. Or not necessarily obstructions, but you want to make it really obvious, right? So here's an example. If you want to make sure that you're journaling, keep your journal and lay it right on top of your keyboard. Right? Don't keep it on the bookshelf or in your drawer where you don't see it. Put that journal right on the keyboard, right? So let's take this outside of trading. If there's another another habit you want to do, like let's say you want to start exercising, right? Well, how can you do that? Well, wear your exercise clothes before you go to bed, and that way you'll exercise when you get up. Instead of wearing pajamas, wear your workout clothes. They're quite comfortable. That's just an example, right? Do things that will remind you. They will remind you that you're working at changing your programming, because right now it's a habit. Your mind is programmed, your body's programmed, you're going to do it, and it's very difficult to break that code, to break that computer code in our mind. So point number 3 is give yourself a reminder, a really strong reminder and a plan of action. When you see that reminder, what are you going to do? When you see that journal, what's the plan of action? Having a key plan and having those reminders are really helpful, but you just got to keep doing it over and over and over again until the programming becomes automatic. All right, now the 4th one is that rewards really matter to us, to human beings, And in the book, they were talking about dopamine. It's like a chemical reaction. So when you do things that your body likes, it releases dopamine. And so an example would be, if you like to watch TV and eat snacks, just thinking about that releases dopamine, and it makes that activity pleasurable. There's a whole list of things that we can do. You could study that or read the book to really get more detail about the dopamine, but just get this, that a reward releases a chemical and that reinforces the good habit. So 2 things that can help with this. Number 1 is that you think about the reward. And so if you're in trading, what could your reward be? How could you reward yourself for following the habit, right? So one thing I do to reward myself is I say, well, if I hit my goals this week, then I'm going to leave work a half hour early, right? That's a good goal. Like, okay, I'm going to leave work a half hour early. Now, you might not be able to do that because you don't control your own schedule, but that's something that I do. If I hit my goal, I'm going to reward myself. Or one thing I used to do would be, if I hit my trading goals this week, I'm going to add more money to my account, right? Because I know that now I'm being disciplined. And so just thinking about those rewards, think about, okay, I'm going to do this. That releases the dopamine, and it helps build that anticipation. So once you understand what your new habits are going to be, you need to now write down what are some rewards that you're going to do to help you. The next point that I want to put from the book that I read is that if you want to build a new habit, you want to make it easy to accomplish. You want to make it easy to accomplish. I have a tendency to try to climb Mount Everest and just go for it, right? That's what I like to do. I like to go big or go home. And that has caused a lot of stress for me in my life, a lot. Because I take such big chunks, and it's not only caused stress for me, it's caused stress for people around me. My family, we're gonna do this new thing, and we're all gonna run 2 marathons, and my family is like, they just, at work, the people I work for, I come up with these big, huge goals, and it stresses them out, and it stresses me out too. So I'm learning, this book has helped me, I'm learning smaller goals, right? So, just do one goal at a time, one habit. You might have 10 bad trading habits. Well, fix one, make that your goal and make it an easy one, and give yourself a little bit of a win. Celebrate your win and just roll with it. What's that? What is something simple and easy that you can do in trading? A couple examples that they gave in the book was, they said, if your goal is to read a book, well, don't say I want to read a book a week. Just read 2 pages a night. And more than likely, if you start reading 2 pages, you're going to read a few more pages. If your goal is to run, don't say you're going to run 10 miles. Just run a little bit and then see if you can go a little further. Just say I want to run 5 minutes. Just something that is actually doable. If you make it too hard, your brain and your body was like, oh, this is too hard, I can't do this. And you'll automatically opt out, right? So make it easy. Make it something easy that you can accomplish. And so that is going to help you with your habit goals. So just think about that. What habits did you already talk about? What habits did you write down? And how can you make them even easier? So in your trading, maybe it's to journal. Instead of journaling every trade in great depth, maybe you just write down like 2 thoughts at the end of the day. Just simple two lines in your journal. And then maybe when you sit down to do your 2 lines, you'll write more. But just think about how to make it as easy as possible to interject into your trading. Another point, and this is the sixth point that they talked about, and that was make your habits immediately satisfying to affect behavior change. So what I mean by this is, and what they mean, what I learned from the book is give yourself an instant gratification, because human beings respond, we as people respond to instant gratification. If you're working with someone, give them that compliment, for a sincere one, that gives instant gratification. So if you do something good, reward yourself right away. I talked about the weekly reward system, like going home if I followed it. But even if you just do it one day, just give yourself an immediate reward, something that to help you with that. And so if you follow your system, and it's not necessarily a winning trade, because winning trades can be formed from bad habits. But if you follow your habit, give yourself an immediate reward. Call someone, be happy share your success with someone, do something to reward yourself right away. And then the last point that I wanted to share with you, and that is create a system for your habits with metrics and accountability. So this is a 2-part, it could be 7 or 8, but the first one, or actually it's a 3-part, a system, metrics, and accountability. So the first thing is a system is always helpful because it reprograms yourself. Again, we want to reprogram, make it easy, and having a system is easy. If you're in the middle of a haphazard chaos, that is very challenging. It's very challenging to change in the midst of chaos, because it's like going against the grain, and it's really hard. But you have a systematic approach to your success. If you have created an actual system, like my system is, okay, I will go in and I'll look at the charts at a specific time for a specific period of time with a specific objective, right? I'm going to look at my charts for an hour. I'm going to come up with my key setups, and I'm going to do this before the market even opens, and I will have my plan going into the week. That's my system, right? And I will have my risk management in place, and that's my system. Right? So now that's the first part. Just create a system for your habits. The next thing is using metrics, numbers. Using those metrics to give you goals to help you keep track and follow up with those metrics. One of my last podcast guests, Simon Severino, I bought his book, Strategy Sprints, and he said that you need to have 3 metrics for your business that you check every single week. And I thought that made a lot of sense, and so I'm adopting that. And as traders, we need to have metrics that we're tracking. We need to have metrics that we're using in our trading. Like, okay, what is your metrics? And I already mentioned one. If you remember, it was keeping your trade losses at a specific number. That's one metric, right? And so I don't recommend using profits, because I think that's the wrong metric. But maybe another good metric you could look at is, how many times did you follow your rules this week? And you have your goal set at 100%. That's a metric. Another metric would be, what's my average win size versus my average loss size? That would be a metric. Right? And then you just go back, you create a system, you follow it, you review your metrics every week. One of the things I do with the traders that are involved in our training is we say, hey, send us your statements every week, and we'll look at them, and we'll tell you, let's start getting some metrics for you to help. Let's get some numbers. What kind of losses are you looking for this week? How are you going to follow along and keep your trading consistent? And then the last part is, give yourself accountability with consequences. So this last point is actually really loaded. I said accountability, but then there's a fourth one, consequences. So we'll talk about accountability. So do you have a friend in your trading that you can confess your trading sins to. And not someone that's going to beat you up and call you a loser, but it's maybe someone you look up to, right? Again, I have my students do this in our classes. It's like, hey, if you don't make it, let me know. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to encourage you. But there's something about telling someone else, especially someone you really respect, that you didn't make it to the standard, because I'm just anticipating not making the standard makes me a little stressed out. I don't want to tell that person that I failed. And so just doing that accountability really helps. And so I've done that even with my kids. Not like for example, I'm trying to lose weight right now. My son Caleb, I say, Caleb, if I don't do this, I'm going to pay you, right? And so that was the other one. Have a consequence for your action, right? Have a consequence for your actions. So if you make your goal, give yourself a reward. But if you don't follow the habit, give it a consequence. So my son Caleb is he's working with me on this, right? And so, give yourself a consequence. Make money. Money, sometimes the pocketbook can really be where it hurts, right? Make money one of those consequences. Having to pay out of pocket if you don't follow your own rules. Be serious with yourself. This will help you with your own personal integrity, because your word is really important, but habits can cause us to not keep our word if we have bad habits. So this will help us with our own personal integrity. And one other point that was worth noting, and that was add some friction with your bad habits. So for example, if your bad habit is to just sit down at the computer and start trading, turn off your computer, go into another room and think of your trading plan until you're ready to trade. And I know for me, I will a lot of times just wanted to sit down and go to the computer and start trading. Well, what I have done to help me create that friction is I start doing my mental planning. I don't even go into the room with the computer. I sit in a room where there is no computer with a notebook, and I start writing things down and making sure I'm ready to go before I even sit down at the computer. Because I know that if I just jump at the computer out of habit, I'm just going to jump in and start doing the bad things. And so I don't want to do that. I want to have a good habit in my life. So that's friction. The great example that they used in the book is if you are watching too much Netflix, well, take the batteries out of the remote, put them in the drawer, and unplug the TV and put the cord away. Next time you go sit down, now that's friction. That's stopping you, and it's an additional reminder. So you're using a positive reaction and a negative. So remember, at the beginning, we talked about having those reminders by keep your journal on your keyboard, but also add friction. So you're getting a double dose of power to help you with following these rules and becoming new habits. So in review, your trading, small habits will make a huge difference. Your habits are everything in trading. Most traders 95% of traders fail, and it's because they have bad habits. This is one of the most important topics in the area of trading that we can have. And so I hope that you can use this training, this podcast, to help you become a very successful trader. And do you remember at the very beginning I said I had a special request? And so what I am going to ask is that if you have enjoyed this podcast, I've been doing this podcast for 4 years now, and if you've enjoyed it at all, if it has had any benefit to your trading, if you've learned something of value, if you've enjoyed listening to the content, would you please consider leaving a favorable review on Apple Podcasts? I've got the link in the description. It should only take a couple minutes, and it would really mean a lot to me because it would show me that I'm having an impact on people by doing this. And it's also good for me as well because it will help boost my rankings. And so other people, other people could learn about this great podcast. So if you've enjoyed it and you want others to find out about it and help me feel like I'm making a difference, please just leave a review I've got the link in the description, and I would really appreciate that. And have a great week. If you have any questions that you need answered about trading or any comments about the show, just leave an email at business@tradingstrategyguides.com, business@tradingstrategyguides.com. And thanks for listening. Have a great week, everyone.